Or you can yell it either way.
You and I share the same name and initials. My name is Steve Bullock, and I traveled 2.5 hours from Minnesota just to meet you. In January, I began an odyssey of coming once a week to Iowa to meet a different Democratic presidential candidate each week, to size you guys up to see for whom I'll eventually support and vote for. You're the 15th one I've met.
Makes me feel special.
You are. By the way, I had an aunt who once lived in Roundup.
Oh, is that right? Yeah.
As president, Governor, will you please eliminate that horrible federal tax on Social Security?
Question was, as president, would you please get rid of that horrible tax on Social Security? Well, I hope to. I mean, but here's the other thing that I need to do. As a governor, you have a little bit different perspective as well, because I've had to balance a budget the whole time I'm there. What we've seen time and time again, I mean, literally last year, 2000, when the tax cuts were passed, $1.5 trillion put on the backs of our kids and grandkids in debt. $1 trillion of stock buybacks happened the first year. That didn't go to us. So what you're doing is you're having more and more of a tax system where average folks aren't getting the services that they need, and we're putting debt on our children. I think fundamentally we have to look at overall tax reform, period, in a way that actually works and pays for the services that folks expect. With someone like SB, and of the 15 candidates, I'm the only one, so now I'm going to count you to come move to Mason City and actually go to caucus. Other questions? Yes, sir.
I got to ask you this question. One of the things that people have called me to tell you coming is that you can work across the aisle. How is that supposed to make me feel good when you're going to work with somebody that locks children up in jail, that makes assault on women's rights, that makes us have, makes it all out, so has for the last 40 years made an assault on our unions?
Yep.
How's that supposed to make you feel good that you can work with people?
Sure. So the question was, when he got a phone call to hear that I'm going to come, one of the things he said is, can actually work with Republicans. And how should that make you feel when you look at locking up kids in cages, an assault on women's rights, an all-out attack on union membership? And from my perspective, look, I'm not so naive to say, like, we'll all grab hands and sing "We Are the World" and walk through, buttercup fields. But I do fundamentally believe, so in a state like Montana, in those areas, my legislature is more Republican than yours in Iowa. We've never once compromised on a woman's right to make her own health care decisions. And we actually took Title X funding, which is for basic women's health. It used to be a fight every single legislative session. We put it into statutory appropriation. We made it go away. We are one of the only states that isn't a right to work for less state. I'm the only governor that actually weighed in at the Supreme Court on both Janus and Friedrichs about the right to organize and collectively bargain. In 2016, when we were talking about Syrian refugees, and everybody's like, oh, we're even shutting down our refugee relocation offices. I said, you know what? Safety and security of Montanans will always be my #1 priority, but we should never let fear or terrorism define the values that we have toward one another. If we want, look, I'm not saying you work with everybody, but if we want Washington, D.C. to work, we've got to recognize that there are individuals now that are supporting this president that aren't reflective of the values that they have in their local communities, or the values of folks I say in Montana all the time. And I don't think it's that much different in other places. Most people's lives are fundamentally too busy to show up on a Tuesday morning at Cabin Coffee, even if it's the 17th can, right? What they want, you want a safe community, you want a decent job, you want a roof over your head, you want clean air, clean water, you want good public schools, not privatized. And we don't have charter schools in Montana too. And you want to believe you can do better for your kids and grandkids than yourself. Like those things, those values aren't just in our party. And if you're appealing to those values, that's how you move things forward. There are some things that what this administration is doing, not just at the presidential level, what Department of Interior has done. One of our great equalizers, in addition to public land, our public education, and public participation in representative democracy, is our public lands. We all own them equally. They are, by so many different actions, rolling back the progress we've made as a country. And I think you have to be strong to that. But that doesn't mean that you can't find ways to make sure that folks have a right to organize and collectively bargain. Look, there are half as many union members today as there are independent contractors. What we've done is we've allowed a system that incents to actually destroy the right to organize and collectively bargain. As a former union side labor lawyer, that doesn't sit too well with me. Ma'am, I think.
What is your stance on eliminating the Electoral College?
So the question was, what is my stance on eliminating the Electoral College? And I think it is troubling that in 2 of the last 5 presidential elections that the winner of the majority, who got the majority of votes didn't end up president. But rather than upending something that's been around since the start of our country, I'd rather turn around and say, why is it that we're not winning in some of these places that we ought to be winning? And from that perspective, because the other thing is, this isn't just about winning election. This is actually about governing. It's not just about cobbling together 270 electoral votes. If we can't compete in places like where you live or where I live, even if you win at the presidential level, you can stop a lot of executive actions, but you're not going to be able to govern again. You're not going to be able to get majorities in the way that we need to move things forward. So I would much rather say, why aren't we winning in places like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa? Look at how many of your counties that were Obama, then we lost to Trump. And the other thing that I think that we all ought to think about, and I know that the representative and senators think about regularly, is we're all here till February, and then we leave. And then you have control over your state house up for grabs. You have the potential to take back your Senate up for grabs. You've had one of the best redistricting programs in the country. That could go away immediately. So we need to be able to win in places like Iowa. Because not only will it impact overall what you can do in Washington, D.C., but it's also going to impact on what your legislative races and your statewide races look like. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you for talking about the judges and the courts, because I think Democrats don't talk about judges enough, especially the Supreme Court, but all of them. About guns. You're winning in Montana with like, in my opinion, people with guns and hunters. Maybe not, but how do you win there?
Question was, what about guns? You're winning in Montana. What was the rest of it? Just what's my view of it, right? And I'm a gun owner, I'm a hunter. 40% of households own guns in the country. And a gun owner and a non-gun owner fundamentally believe the same things. They want to keep themselves and their community safe. They don't want guns in the wrong hands. If we ever looked at this as a public health issue, not as a political issue, you could address it. Universal background checks, making sure that everybody, before they get a gun, goes through a background check and fixing the background check system. Now that's one where not only Democrats think this is a good idea, Republicans think this is a good idea. We know that if there's a gun involved where there's a restraining order in place, the chance of a woman dying goes up 10x. Many states have said, all right, we're going to remove a gun at that point. Our red flag laws, which allow the opportunity to take a gun away. I've been asked, the president can ask, either president can ask us to lower flags. And we do it for Veterans Day, Memorial Day, all kinds of things. Over the fourth of the times that I've been asked to lower flags since I've been governor for 6.5 years, been for mass shootings. The fact that my 6th grade son this year, when he started new school, at the end of the week, I'm like, Dad, I'm like, Cam, what did you learn? I learned where to go in case of an active shooter. When I was growing up, the NRA was a hunting safety organization. Now it is nothing more than a straight political organization. And we don't know where that money's coming from. So, well, it could well be. So we really fundamentally do, again, like this is another area where I think we have more in common than we have in part. And we've got to address where the money's coming from to influence the system. And if we could look at it from a public health approach, I think we could make progress.
Governor, we have time.
One more question? Yes, sir.
Me?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to change the tone here a little bit, Governor. I wanted to introduce myself. My name is Randy Black. I'm the chair of the Iowa Democratic Wingding. So you're actually in Wingding land. You've probably heard
I felt it. I felt it in my bones.
We do an event every year at the Grand Surf Ballroom in Clear Lake, Iowa. It's one of the most historical venues in northern Iowa. It was the last place Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper did their last musical hurrah before that fatal crash in February. We're on our 16th annual. We've had the likes of Barack Obama, Senator Edwards, Hillary Clinton at our event.
You're going to give me an exclusive, aren't you?
We want to put you on the stage with every other candidate this August on the 9th. And we'd like to personally invite you to be one of our guest speakers for that night, so you're able to tout your claim why you want to be president on that stage. We're one of the largest fundraisers in the state.
Randy, I so appreciate it, and I so appreciate you, me being the only one that you invited. Look, I appreciate you coming out. Let me close with one last thought. So when I got elected governor, it had been 40 years in Montana since kids the age that my kids were, they were 6, 8, and 10, had been part of this whole thing. And the first State of the State address I gave, I said that kids learn from our words and our deeds, what we say and how we behave. And it's time that we start acting like our kids are watching, as they are. I think that's more true today than ever before. And at some point, not only does this president have to address it, but every candidate has to address how we're actually going to make it a better system. I fundamentally believe that we can. That's why I'm in it. I so appreciate you coming out. I so appreciate the Iowa Nice, where I know that I'm on everyone's list. But I hope take a close look at both what I'm doing and how I'm doing it. And by caucus time, I hope to have you on board. Thanks so much for that. I know. There's a Bullock right here, too.
Yeah. Well, the mayor came to welcome you.
Mayor,
Yeah, nice to have you here.
you have a real tough job. Mine's easy. Thanks again for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.